Hey folks and friends, welcome here. Today I'm going to be sharing something that is very top of mind for me as I'm heading into kind of like the last stretch of my pregnancy. And I think this is more honestly a reminder for me, just to kind of solidify the priorities that I want to have going into this last little stretch of a pregnancy. And maybe this would be just like good food for thought for your own personal maybe preparation and thoughts, just like going into maybe it's your first time having a baby or you've already had a baby, you're expecting another. So before I jump in though, I just want to say thank you to everybody who listens to this podcast. If you find it helpful, fruitful, and good, I would super appreciate it if you shared it with a friend. And I'm always looking and open to just feedback, thoughts, and topics that would be of interest to speak about. So if there is anything that's on your mind or something you want to kind of just like hear another person's perspective and thought about, definitely email me at musingsofaCatholicMom@gmail.com. And I would love to hear from you and hear some of your thoughts or questions that you might have. Okay, so let's jump in. So I'm going to rewind back to before I had Malachi. And before I had Malachi, so he's our fourth, I had a really hard time at that last stretch before I gave birth because around the 38-week mark, I started having a lot of false labor signs. And so in the middle of the night, I would have really strong contractions. I'd have them all night. I would get basically no sleep. And then in the morning, they would go away. And then I would have to obviously still go about my day and take care of my kids and kind of like do the things that I had to do. I wasn't able to. We didn't have my husband didn't have time off or anything like that for me to really rest throughout the day. And so that wasn't really something that we could do. And so it was just a very difficult season. And I found myself really falling into a rut in that period before I gave birth to my son, just being really impatient because I was tired. I was exhausted. I was really impatient, really short with the kids. I was frustrated by this whole on and off labor situation. And I noticed that I started to fall into just kind of like wanting to escape the suffering that I was experiencing, the hardship. I found myself in the pockets of breaks that I had throughout the day, like because I was in a lot of physical pains too. I was like throwing up, and I still had kind of like contraction like feelings throughout the day, and and you're always kind of on edge because you're like, is this it? Is this not it? Am I going to be going into labor? Should I call my parents? Kind of all that stuff. All the moments that I was taking a break or I had a moment, I would maybe go on my phone and go on my email, check my email, go online shopping, like anything to kind of like escape this particular season that I was going through. I would just waste my time. And then it's like, when my kids would come and interrupt me, even though I was in the middle of doing nothing, as if they were bothering me, while I was as if I was doing something important, which I wasn't, I would just be super short with them. And I remember looking back on that time, and even in the moment, when you see yourself kind of getting into that sort of rut, I remember feeling and carrying a lot of frustration with myself, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. And I look back at that time, and I also notice how I think it kind of spilled into my birth, where I've been really blessed with good births. They've all been relatively quick. I've been able to give birth naturally, so it was always just pretty simple, for all things considered, simple process, so to speak. And so there wasn't anything that was complicated or wrong, or went wrong with the birth with my son, Malachi. But I found that in the process of labor, I definitely was not as surrendered as I have remembered and recalled myself to be in previous births. I wasn't as peaceful. I wasn't as focused in a resilient sort of way. I was kind of just in a hurry, wanted to get it over with. And that's obviously, that kind of makes sense, considering that, yeah, that everybody by the end of it kind of wants to have their baby. But after I gave birth and sort of the cloud, everything kind of settles a bit, and you're just kind of like thinking back to the labor and the delivery and all of that stuff. I looked back and I felt a great sense of disappointment in myself of how I handled kind of that last stretch, how I was really just not I was just not the kind of woman, and I was not manifesting the kind of attitudes that I would want to or like to. And I didn't offer a lot of my trials and sufferings to the Lord at all. Like, I kind of just I was just in a mindset of I just want this done and over with. And that's all I care about. I don't care about doing this thing well. I don't care about, making this a season of time of hardship and suffering into something beautiful or redemptive, or for it to be put to any good. I was in a pretty negative headspace prior to having my son. And so because of that, this go around, I remember thinking to myself, okay, next time I really want to combat that. I don't want that to happen again. I don't want to have those kinds of feelings. And as I'm entering into this last stretch, the temptation is there. I've been really struggling in this last little bit with, well, I'm almost 36 weeks, and so there's still about a month out, but just I think with kids, this is my 7th pregnancy, my 5th baby earthside, and so there is just more pain. There's more kids, there's more to manage, and I'm starting to feel a lot of the things that I typically do just a lot sooner than I usually do, and I think that's relatively normal. I've been having some pelvic issues. I have kind of the quote unquote normal things that go along with coming to the end of your pregnancy. I've just been having nausea and, aches and swelling and all, whatever, all the different kinds of things. And it is making me a little bit anxious, I guess you could say, or I do feel a little intimidated by the fact that I already feel on a physical level and on an emotional, mental level, struggling and wanting to do and end well, but also realizing that it's already kind of hard and it's there's still quite a ways to go. And so really, like I said, I think this episode for me will be just a reminder to myself and a fortifying of what it is that I want to make a priority, how I want God to work in this last stretch of this pregnancy, and to be really committed to that, and to not let the temptation of hardship and suffering, or the result of suffering and hardship, make me just want to reject the suffering, make me wanting to ignore and just push everything out of my head and just kind of get it over with, but to really utilize this time to prioritize the things in my life that will be changing now that we'll be welcoming another child into our lives, for a period of time. And so I think this is a good place to start of, what do I want to make a priority? And what I think ultimately should be priorities to women before they give birth, besides the practical things that, usually are a priority, because it's obviously, meal prep and getting the clothes ready and cleaning up things and getting all the baby stuff. That's all the practical good things that you need to do to prepare for the baby. But I do think the most important things to prepare to have this baby are really these kinds of intangibles that I'm going to kind of get into now. So the first priority that I really want to cultivate and keep top of mind and not lose is the last impressions I want to leave with my kids to be really good. I want to make it a priority to hold and spend time with my children more before I'm kind of cooped up upstairs and resting a bit more. And that I don't want their last memories of me before I give birth or before I leave the house. We're going to be going to the hospital this time to give birth. So I don't want their last impressions of me to be this grouchy, worn out, high-strung, irritable mother that, yes, it's exciting that they're excited that they're going to be welcoming another baby into this world, and they are so excited, and I'm so happy that they're so excited that we're going to be having this baby. But it's so important to me to leave my children off with the memory that I love them, that I'm going to miss them, that they're not feeling any sort of, I guess, like there's no negative feelings towards me, or feeling like they were kind of neglected and treated poorly or resented or anything like that. And I know that the baby, when the baby comes, like, in a sense, everything will be kind of wiped clean, so to speak, and like the memories, maybe it'll be a bit muddled. But like, that's just not the kind of mom and woman and pregnancy that, like, that's not what I want them to associate with. One, their mother. Two, with the coming of a new baby, that like the result of having another child, and of course it's not this for the entire pregnancy, but just that their last impression isn't like, oh, the last we remember of her mom before bringing a child home is like she was always so grouchy and irritable, and so I had like such a short bandwidth. And so I really don't want that to be their lasting impression of me, or their last impression of me before I go into labor. I want them to feel like they have been loved, and I'm so excited to bring this baby home to them. Another thing that I want to make a priority is just being super solid on a mental and emotional level. And that's obviously that's part related to the first point. And so what does that look like for me? I know that's going to mean just like kind of blocking out a lot of things in my life, like just not really doing a lot in terms of any busyness or like trying to make a lot of huge commitments, but just like resting more, praying more, being really intentional about making pockets of prayer like a priority throughout the day. I know I'm going to need that. I'm going to need the grace. I'm going to need the patience. But I also just need that focus and that time with our Lord, and to really, I know that in order to really enter into this kind of season well, and to kind of understand in some ways like the complexities, the goodness that God wants to bring out into this last stretch of time, like I need to be in really solid communion with Him. So that is something I'm making a lot more of a priority, is just being really intentional about kind of seizing every pocket in the day to just be a moment of like quiet meditation, like not a time to like be busying myself really with much, like on a practical level. Because honestly, I'm kind of slow anyway. I don't have a lot of energy to do a lot right now. But doing that, and then just enjoying being in the fresh air with my kids and just being around them, and just enjoying these like kind of simple moments of life that, yeah, are going to change. Like the time that I'm going to be able to spend with them in this next season is going to change. It's going to look different. I'm not going to have the same capacities and the same time to just like kind of hang out with them. I'm going to be nursing. I'm going to be, taking care of the baby. I'm going to be resting. Like there's just this upcoming season is going to mean that there's going to be less of me, and I want to give as much as of myself now that I have to give to them before I'm taken to have to do other things. And I think at the foundation of what I really want to take out of this last stretch of pregnancy is the lesson, the ability, the virtue to suffer the hard things very well. Motherhood in general, contains in and of itself a lot of suffering, particularly in childbearing and child rearing and leading up to having a baby. I would argue that it's in some ways harder, especially after you have more children. That last stretch before you give birth to the baby is in some ways like harder than the labor and delivery in and of itself, because after you labor and deliver the baby, I mean, you're kind of just, you have to rest, right? Like you have to be in bed. You can't really do much. But prior to giving birth and prior to giving birth, you still have to continue to care for your children, to kind of do all the tasks that you have to do while going through the physical pains and sufferings of your pregnancy, of the heaviness of the baby, the false labors, the nausea and things like that just come with the end of pregnancy as the baby is bigger. But you can't just stop what you're doing. You still have to make food and do laundry and take care of your home and take care of your children. And so that's like a really, I think that this last stretch is always uniquely difficult because of just the position that you're in and unable to rest or really recover as much as you would like to, because you still have all these duties and responsibilities that you have to attend to. And so the big thing that I really want to take out of this season, again, is just suffering really well, seeing like the hardship of this season as a wonderful gift, really, that God has given me to be able to have a child, to be able to welcome new life into this world, to grow our family. That there's so much to be grateful for. There's so much blessing in this time. And perception is kind of everything, right? Like, that's why you can have two people who go through the same kind of experience and then they come out saying and taking different things from it, all because of, in a lot of ways, is perspective. And I want to have the perspective coming into this last stretch that this season is a great gift. It's a great gift because I'm going to have a baby, but also it's a gift because these are the kinds of moments that really test and refine you, and really reveal the areas of your life that you are weak, that you are doubtful, that are not surrendered, and things that you're attached to. As much as I, in a sense, don't like seeing the kind of sides that come out in those times. I mean, these are kind of necessary in order to root them out, is to be put in these situations where you're tempted to despair or to be depressed, or to you have a habit of escapism, right? Like you try to just do other stuff. And I don't want those things to be a part of myself, right? I want to grow in virtue. I want to be proud and like confident in the woman I am and the woman I'm becoming too, and that I'm doing what is truly pleasing to the Lord, not because it's easy, like not just when it's easy, but when it's extremely difficult, and that I feel stretched and pulled in all of these different areas. So I think that's a good place to wrap up here. Like I said, this might be good food for thought, good reminder to you if maybe you're in a place of suffering or in a place where you're about to have a baby, and just a good reminder to, kind of think about your own priorities and the things that you want to make right and do well in this last stretch and season of a pregnancy. And I hope that was helpful and fruitful to you. I'm definitely going to hold myself accountable by listening to this, I think, more in this last little bit of time. And I hope, and again, that this musing and these thoughts were helpful to you. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Till next time, friends. God bless.